We're here today, slowly playing catch-up, as we cover last week's community comic, the third release, titled The Truth Comes Out. This chapter's artist is the fantastic Jocy, and I really enjoy their sort of Sin City colour palette mixed with a heavily accentuated manga visual style. This chapter is an absolute doozy, confirming some suspicions that we've had for a while, and Jocy has done a brilliant job bringing it to life. I really enjoy again how we're using Lifeline as a through line throughout a few of the community comics to keep us up with a form of chronology and to fill out the focus of each chapter. Just having this sort of recurring B-plot pop up in each chapter I think is really nice for spacing out the involvement of all the legends. But, how are they involved? Let's jump in, shall we? My dad wasn't in this story. Never was. Never will be. We got the bad guy. We all should remember this from the final chapter of Season 7. Damn it, Silva. Is this real or did you make it all up out of boredom? Answer your flippin' phone. Shay, we kicked his ass, and now I get to go for a run. Excuse me, sorry, forget any of it ever happened. All's well that ends well. That's my happy ending. AJ, I got... This panel must have been a challenge to lay out. Again, very well done to Jocy. This is difficult to read, but personally, this sort of thing comes down to the script that they were given. With the limited space they're using, this is hard to do, especially when you're cutting various characters across each other. Geez and ages, Wraith, you scared me to death. Sorry, this place is a zoo. More infections every hour, but you got it? Current contact info for one Chico Sawtelle. Right here. I think that's really clever. Gotta go. If you see Silva, tell him to call me. What do you want with a trashy gossip vlogger? This is about the fuse thing? The fuse thing I'm uncertain about, whether it's the events of Armageddon or whether there is something further that I'm missing, unsure. I really like that Lifeline is actually being pretty intelligent about this, going to Chico Sawtelle to find out info about Creighton Sawtelle so that she can find out info on Eduardo Silva and the attempted assassination is actually a really smart way for her to go meddling with the supreme powers that be, such as someone like Eduardo Silva. But then we jump into the chapter proper. Are you a doctor? I've been waiting for 3 hours. Did you hear me? There's a lot to say about this Wraith, I think. Fire in the hole. I said, are you a kaboom? Was that a bomb? Are we under attack? I don't think so. There's no heat, no fire. Stay here. Quickly before we go and find out who or what this was, the fact that this is a bald Wraith does make me wonder if it's some kind of analogous character to her, like Voidwalker, having shaved her head in sort of balance against our Wraith, or if its appearance is being influenced by her memories of herself. Whether this is an accurate representation of the Wraith speaking to her could be kind of interesting. But the attitude of this Wraith definitely seems to fit with the more aggressive Rene Blasé that this universe knew in the past, which I'm sure you can imagine why I'm mentioning. As we lead into the other part of that conundrum. I know a dozen ways to kill a man in under 5 seconds, and I'm dying to try them all with a stethoscope. These two panels, I think, are really well artistically executed on. I really enjoy how over-the-top Bangalore is presented here, and how desolately moody the shading of Wraith's face makes her feel. The community artists are consistently proving themselves to be a hell of a lot better than the in-game artist for this season. Sorry. But yeah, as we can see, Bangalore dropped the smoke. That's why no one's actually in danger, except for maybe Bangalore's temper or anyone who gets in her way. I should have known. I'm gonna regret this. You won't regret this. Too late, already do. Again, is this more Wraith's actual doubts? Or is this Voidwalker actively commenting moment to moment on her situation? If this is a Wraith, if this is an other Wraith and not sort of a representation of her subconscious, this is Voidwalker. And I like in that case that she would have shaved her head to sort of parallel Wraith's change. And as you may know my theory that Bangalore is holding on to Voidwalker's pilot knife because she got involved with Jackson and blew up the ship, it becomes all the more key that this is Voidwalker. The end of this chapter, you all know what happened. We know why I'm coming to that, yeah? Hi boys, see this card? Says I'm a doctor? I'll take it from here. Says I'm a doctor. I didn't even realize that it's fake. She palmed off that kid in the last page because she's not exactly a doctor. Although, Wraith is actually a doctor. Although I assume we don't know what she's a doctor of. But yeah, I like that she's actually presenting that in some kind of doubt. A lot of her interactions through the comic so far have been centered around self-doubt. In She Blinded Me with Science, while Wraith is the one who's actually getting us to the bottom of things by leading us along the right paths, she does also mention that she's kind of left her scientist days behind. She doesn't really think in those terms as much anymore. So it's interesting that this is not just an element of self-discovery in terms of her history as Voidwalker or Voidwalker's relation to this universe, but it's also self-discovery in how Wraith wants to feel about her profession, the things that she's skilled in, the things that she wants to do. Hopefully by the end of this arc, she will have done something to restore some faith in herself. Never mind what this lady has to do with things. I'll take it from here. But Miss Andrade said, I'll talk to Miss Andrade. Must be a masochist too. Again here, the dialogue does feel a little difficult to paint who's saying what where, and this line especially, I'm not sure whose she's wondering is a masochist. Herself, maybe? That's kind of way more interesting than this guy, at least. And it does kind of make sense that she feels that she's putting herself through punishment to bring herself closer to her past, and she kind of likes it. And, you know, that's not the healthiest place to be in, but at least she's acknowledging it. I'd much rather be a masochist than a sadist, I'll say that much. All that time wasted making shivs, just needed to wave one of these in someone's face. And she's trying to make friends as well. That's the real tragedy of this, that we all know, Bangalore included, that Wraith herself, our Wraith, isn't really responsible. Yeah, well, knowing is half the battle. Excuse me. Yeah, knowing is literally half the battle. The dialogue in this chapter is actually really good at unveiling some more of the subtext hidden behind it. That's actually pretty interesting. Going somewhere? Lo said they're mapping out a plan, finding a cure. I need to be there. I just came from there. It's tense. You showing up won't help that. I'm glad that we've had the 4th chapter of the in-game comics to back this up, because yeah, on release I wasn't exactly sure why it was so tense. With the crypto-caustic drama, this actually makes a lot more sense now. Wait, you were part of this meeting of the minds? They really were desperate. See ya, headcase. She keeps using that term, and that's fucking nasty, right? That is not a good light to be painting Bangalore in. But I think that's part of the issue. That for all that Bangalore suffers and how she feels people will demonize her and the IMC, the way that she uses language against some people who are literally fucking suffering through no fault of their own is like a poisonous attitude that she is hopefully going to realize probably through this season. That's the kind of arc that would definitely work to balance out her emotional connection to someone like Loba in realizing how she pushes others away and how she then harms them emotionally. So while I can see some people not really liking this, I think it's good to have Bangalore have this quite clear flaw to her character that she's going to have to work on. But as this chapter again kind of proves, she has reasoning for at least having personal distaste in this situation. This line I just don't get. Sooner than you think it seems. They really were desperate. See a head case. Sooner than you think it seems. Right, the amount of times I read this through and I've never actually figured out what that line was meant to be in reference to. The comics can be a little difficult to read at sometimes. I think it is good to take the time and actually read them through bit by bit and see how everything influences each other. Sooner than you think it seems. So that's just her pointing out that she's keeping her here. I don't have time for this. Look, I know this is frustrating. Again, she's trying to be understanding. We don't know enough about these spores to let you leave. Wraith is actually really getting her scientist head on. She's proving herself to be a really strong leader through these last few comics she's been involved in. And while I actually notice it as it's so prominent in this page, I really enjoy how different and abstract the art style for her void portals feels. In that even within the sort of visual style of this iteration of the Apex Legends universe, the void portal is something completely other. I think that's a really interesting artistic choice. Never mind the fact that it's one of the few things actually shown in color. The actual visual stylings of it, almost like a crayon or something, really makes it stand out. And if no one had noticed, because I only just did, little Nessie down the bottom. Extra points to Jocy, very good work. So we don't know enough about the spores to let Bangalore leave? No, what I need is for you to stop telling me what I need and let me leave the room. Okay, you're clearly unhinged. If you think Loba will let you travel across the Outlands like this, clever girl, I don't give a damn what Loba wants. I'm not gonna lie here feeling sorry for myself waiting to die. It's good to see that Bangalore still is very determinately herself, regardless of the emotional connection that Loba has to her. I don't get off on my own misery. That's kind of a lie. Sorry, Bangs, you kinda do quite a lot. I'm not you, Wraith. Way to deflect your own issues, that's harsh. Like, Wraith suffers, and she's kinda constantly reminded about it, as we saw on the previous page, with all the voices streaming through her head. That is a little different than regret and guilt. But it's actually pointing out how similar these two women actually are, and it's a real shame that incidents in the past are throwing a wall up between them. And I also have to say, goddamn, the shading on Bangalore's face here, and I think we get an awesome mirror of that shot here. These two almost feel, especially this face of Wraith's, it almost feels like Picasso-esque. It's really strange how the shading works, and how they've used some of these fill-ins to create extra sense of texture and depth. And not to hate on the in-game chapters even more, but the community artists know how to draw facial expressions. Like, realistic, yet still stylized. The artist for this season's in-game comics personally just doesn't know how to draw faces full stop. This is way more deserving of the artistic styles on show. And I do quite like just that tiny little hint of blue. Very, very nice. That's it. You're hitting below the belt, which means this is personal. What aren't you telling me? What did I do to you? You're out of your damn mind. And this becomes a little difficult to follow, their fight scene. But I think for the constraints that they have, the space that they have to fit this in, the physical space they have to fit this in, and then the actual use of portals itself, I think they pull this off really, really well. Bangalore throws her overhead, she disappears through a portal, appears behind her underneath. Maybe I'm out of my mind, but I'm right about this. Wraith is, yeah, she's coming to realize that this isn't Bangalore lashing out at just anyone. You hate my guts. Why? Sweep from behind. Lovely little flip there. I love the dynamic motion. And Wraith is just ahead in a portal. Let's see what you can do without those damn portals, huh? This again, the dialogue is so good at referencing this sort of subtext. The Bangalore is actively hating on the progression of the Ares division within how she talks to Wraith and fights her. She wants to fight woman to woman, essentially, and feels that Wraith is almost cheating, just as Bangalore feels the actions of the Ares division cheated the people of the IMC out of being viewed as normal people. I'm trying to help you. This on its own is a great representation of how difficult it is for people with this sort of mental trauma to be able to relate to each other. Yeah, that's really, really strong. And then for Bangalore to then go and use the portals, going back literally on what she just said, shows, yeah, these two women are still so trapped in their own trauma that they can't actually see how close on side both of them as individuals would be. Bangalore is far too attached to the history of not exactly this woman that she's not even prepared to put it aside. What does that even mean? And I love the use of color again here. It means Jackson should be here trying to stop me from leaving. But he's not. And it's your fault. You, Wraith. You're the reason I can't find my brother. Next chapter, wrong Wraith. So there we go. I was right. Voidwalker is the reason that Bangalore and her brother Jackson were separated, as Voidwalker had to have been on the IMS Hestia to escape from the frontier to the Outlands with Bangalore and her brother in the closing days of the Frontier War. We know that Jackson became very close with a certain unnamed Ares scientist during their several years on board the IMS Hestia following their escape from Gridiron, and they even had a shard of the Ark on board the Hestia that allowed them to escape. That is probably what led to Wraith and Dr. Singh setting up Project Wraith. You could even argue that gives you some form of motivation for Voidwalker as to why she wants to discover alternate dimensions, because in her dimension, her home planet was destroyed when she was just a young teen. She knows there's no way back from that, so the potential family she lost there, who we might even know from audio logs from Titanfall 2 regularly mentioning Hope, capitalized as is Wraith's middle name, aiming to find a new universe where her family didn't die, does seem to be pretty convincing motivation for Renee Blasé to then even submit herself as a test subject for Project Wraith. So not only do we now know where Bangalore's pilot knife came from, it has to be fucking Voidwalker's, and I'd even bet that it has photos on it of Voidwalker and Jackson as a couple, but I think we're now also going to get much more expansion into why Dr. Renee Blasé became a doctor of some form, probably on board the Hestia, and then why she actually wanted to complete Project Wraith in the first place. I'd be interested to see if Voidwalker was responsible for the actual explosion, or if Bangalore feels she's more responsible for things like the use of the Ark, or even just in the vein of taking Bangalore's brother away from her on an emotional level. I've brought this theory up more than enough by now. There's a lot of details from Pathfinder's Quest you may want to check on my older videos for to get more of the exact context, but that's the crux of what this chapter was trying to bring us. I'm really impressed how succinctly it was able to get that over, and how the setup that we have is more than enough for us to understand this chapter on its own. The pacing of this season has been really good, both across the chapters and per chapter, always giving us some kind of genuine development to work from. And as a final note before I finish up here, Bangalore's musculature is, exceptional. Never mind how much better at facial structure Jocy is than the in-game artist, their display of physical structure is, again, putting them utterly to shame. This is reaching like Iraqi levels of detailed musculature, and it's being used for the exact right effect. This is a very tasty chapter, plenty of conflict to build on, that's hopefully going to give us a lot more context for the history of these two characters. I'm again just totally impressed on a visual angle and in how refined this chapter actually works out to be, and I can only imagine that it's going to continue on in that vein. So with that, that's enough out of me. Thanks for staying with me, friends. I've been Euclidean Vision, the emotional support. Take care of yourselves out there, teammates. And may the glorious light of Best Girl shine within you. Bye-bye.